Welcome back to the Common Sense Show. I am Micah, and I am so glad to be back with you all. I have a wonderful guest today. We are talking about cybersecurity for small businesses. Here's the thing: is there are some compelling stats that I'm sure that my guest today will actually bring up about cybersecurity and why it's relevant to you if you run a small business or if you're an entrepreneur. Today, thieves have all day to think about how to hack you. And so today we're going to talk about how to protect your business. Before we get into our interview today, I just have a couple of housekeeping notes. The first one is that don't forget that I am building a community of small business and entrepreneurs who are looking to grow their business and to communicate with all other small business owners and entrepreneurs. I have just recently launched the Common Sense Show Locals, where for $7 a month, you can chat with other entrepreneurs and small business owners 24/7, talk business. There will be bonus episodes of the show. There will be a monthly Q&A with me and with you. And there will be other interesting little member-only pieces of content that you can find on the Common Sense Show. So go to commonsenseshow.locals.com. That will be in the description of this podcast, and become a Common Sense Show member for less than, I think it's 0.00 something cents a day, which is $7 a month. It's probably like a half a cent a day. I don't know. I haven't done the math on that one. But anyways, you should become a member. Now it's time to get to our guest, cybersecurity expert, Laura Belmayne. We're going to invite her into the show. Hey, Laura, welcome to the Common Sense Show.
Thank you so much for having me, Micah.
So, Laura, you are the CEO and founder of SafeStack. Can you tell us what SafeStack is, why your company is so important to the future of mankind, and what considerations does your firm help business owners actually confront and face?
Sure. Okay, so I'm one of those irritating entrepreneurs. Some of you at home may be those type where you've just got a mission. You've got something that you needed to I need to do this in the world, and this is mine. So I've spent the last 25 years teaching organizations, big and small, all around the world, how to think in a way that looks at the things that could go wrong, but not in a negative way, but in a way that you can then address them. And particularly in security. So I'm kind of the nicest criminal-minded person that you'll ever meet, I guess. And SafeStack is mine and my co-founder Erica's way of, we could do this as consultants and, charge huge rates and, have 5 clients and be very happy, but we're stubborn. And in the middle of COVID, we were like, well, how hard could it be to teach every organization how to think about and how to build security into what they're doing without getting commitments and all those life things in tow? SafeStack became a thing in the world, and now we're helping almost 2,000 organizations in 89 countries, ranging from just 2 people all the way up to banks, to understand and then take action so that we're all a little bit safer.
Yeah, so let's talk about, we're going to talk about how to do that. And get some suggestions for you on that. But let's step back, of course. I like to know the history, right? So tell me, why was it important for you to teach others about cybersecurity? Why cybersecurity, and why is it important for you to teach other people?
So I got into cybersecurity completely by accident, if I'm honest. I started out, when I was a teenager, and we all, you've got that picture of what you're going to be when you grow up. And I wanted to be a lawyer. At the time, and I'm going to age myself terribly, Ally McBeal was very, very big. And I was like, I'm going to be like that. But things happened. And I come from a small town that's famous for 2 things, teenage pregnancy and car theft. And so when you're from that kind of place, it turns out things happen. And at 16, I needed to get a job. And I needed to support myself. And so in my hometown, there were options. I could go to work for McDonald's and that route, and no shame there. If it's paying your bills, it's getting the job done. Right. Or there was this company that it had this apprentice thing in software, and I had no idea about software development at all, but it paid well. And the interview was just solving puzzles. And I was like, well, cool, sweet, I can do that for an hour. So at age 16, I became a junior COBOL developer. And I've been on this adventure first as a software engineer, so building all the cool systems in the world that I've enjoyed, from radiation monitoring software in Switzerland through to government intelligence systems and everything in between. And then about 20 so years ago, my boss came up to me and said, Laura, I love what you're doing, but you have this irritating habit of looking at something and going, what happens if I push all of those buttons in the wrong order? And as a result, I would always find these flaws. I'd find problems in systems. I'd be able to go and look at a system and go, oh, cool, I could steal that. It's just, I don't know, maybe it's my background, maybe it's where I grew up, who knows? But I was able to do that. And that led me to cybersecurity. Because cybersecurity for me is just about looking at systems in different ways and being creative and playful. And so the reason I teach it is, well, I'm from my mother's side of the family are all storytellers. They love teaching. They love connecting with people. It's my happy place. And from my father's side, they're all engineers, literally, you know, bridges and motor vehicles and all sorts. And when you mash those two together, you have this insatiable urge to teach people. And the least irritating way for mankind for me to make use of that superpower is to teach other people cybersecurity.
I like it. I like, you know, this is probably one of the reasons why I could never be the president of the U.S. because I would hop on an airplane or aircraft or a nuclear missile silo and I would just start pressing buttons. Not for any, you know, malevolent reason other than the fact that they're shiny and round, and I'm just like you. So I understand that that aspect of your personality.
I think it's something that we all do as children too. If you've got kids at home, you'll have noticed that they do this naturally. They'll look at something and they see potential. They don't see limits. They don't see rules. They don't see physics. Like I have a 5-year-old, she doesn't believe in physics at all. And so when you're a kid, you will push the boundaries of every system you interact with because it's natural to you. And as we grow up, especially, you know, now we're business owners and entrepreneurs, there are so many rules governing what we do, you know, from tax law to, you know, what you can do on the street to how you communicate politely in society, that we get so used to operating inside the rules, it becomes very hard for us to understand what happens outside of it. So if you were able to step outside and go, what if, you'd see the world very differently.
Yeah, it's true. Once you tell the kid to stop touching stuff, and I have 2 kids. When they were young, I'm like, don't touch that. And then they walk around the corner and then you start touching it. It's like,
yeah, exactly. You get the finger and aha.
So I feel like there's a misconception, or not even a misconception, but I think there's just a general apathy when it comes to small business owners and cybersecurity. Like it's this, you know, 500-pound gorilla in the room, but at the same time, it doesn't apply to me. I'm not concerned about that 500-pound gorilla throwing poop at me because I'm a small business owner, and they usually throw their poop at the other 500-pound gorilla in the room, not the little gorilla in the corner. Why do you think that there's this mindset that exists with small business owners where they just kind of divorce themselves of the reality that they could be, you know, in the crosshairs of someone who has, you know, bad intent?
Well, I think the first thing we have to do is bring it back to risk. Now, I'm not going to get boring with this, don't worry. Everything in cybersecurity is about risk. It's a very small niche, a very little piece of the risk space that we're in as business owners, as entrepreneurs. But as small business owners, as entrepreneurs, we're actually running some of the riskiest businesses on the planet. And so we're already dealing with risk every day. We see another one labeled cybersecurity and our head's going to go, cool. All right, let's see how it stacks up compared to the other things in my world. And I'm going to face it, in this market and in many others, you've got many other problems, many other bigger risks before it gets to cybersecurity. You know, how am I meeting payroll? Have I done my taxes right? All of these things are likely to kill your business quicker than cybersecurity in 99% of the cases. However, that's not to say that we shouldn't care about it. It's just, it's quite natural to not prioritize it if you've got a lot of other things to do. So the trick here instead is, rather than us saying, hey, we need to focus on it and have this huge focus, we need to embrace what makes us really good business owners. And that's making this easy to manage without a lot of effort. So for me, the focus of cybersecurity in a smaller organization is not saying, hey, it matters to me and therefore I need to invest huge amounts of time and focus above other things. It's saying, yes, it matters, but it matters in a way that I can invest some time in simple, consistent, cheap things to do, mostly, that will mean that I don't need to think about this, that there are reasons why this risk is lower naturally.
Yeah, it's funny because I feel like the main reason why small business owners don't do things is because this perception that of the cost benefit, like the time. If I spend time doing this, I can't do this. That leaves this open, which is a revenue generating activity. And a lot of small businesses operate on the margins anyway when it comes to just trying to keep their doors open versus and keep those, those POs and those invoices flowing. And so it feels like just another thing that I have to do, almost being like depressed, right? Like it's another thing that I have to do that I can't do that I don't have time for. And it's anxiety producing. Right. And so I can see how that element of being, just being, understanding the importance on some level or maybe not understanding the importance. But at the same time, just in the kind of cost benefit, like just thinking that, well, I think I'm protected enough as long as I have encrypted my credit cards when they've gone into my payment processor, whether that's online or in person or something like that. Then I'm good, and I can't be hacked. But faulty thinking, of course.
Yeah, so there's some really interesting stats, and you alluded to it in your intro. But one comes from Google. Google has a very big security research arm you've probably never heard of because they're very good at what they do. And they look at all of the attacks globally on places like Google Workspaces. So you might be running Google Workspaces as your primary system, so your email and your word processor and things. Or you might be in Microsoft's Office 365, same. Now, what they looked at was all of the attacks that were happening globally that they could see, and they could see quite a lot because these companies are huge. Right. Now, what they found was 80% of the attacks they were seeing were very simple attacks. It's the equivalent of you walking down a street and seeing a package on a doorstep and going, cool, I could just take that with me and no one will notice. Right. It's that kind of attack. These are not Hollywood escapades. They are somebody who's being opportunistic. They're seeing an opportunity. They're going for it. They're going to get the quick win and they're going to move on. 20% of the attacks fit into the other category, those more sophisticated, planned in advance, personalized, targeted attacks. Now, if we bear that in mind as small business owners, that means that 80% of the reason that companies are being breached, that they're having these cyber incidents, are simple, not particularly exciting, not particularly sexy attacks. And that means the solutions to them are often what we'd call low-hanging fruit. So simple fixes that normally you can just do once and apply them and off you go. This dramatically lowers the number of these common attacks that you're going to be susceptible to. Now, as a small business person, in reality, the most common attacks we see against our systems that, it's not personal, it's just opportunistic, are things like invoice fraud. So somebody sending an invoice to you and changing some financial details to send it to the wrong place, sending whaling, so sending an email impersonating a senior leader at your small business, asking somebody else to do something. Account compromise because our passwords are poor. These are not sexy, they're not particularly complex. But these are the ones we want to focus on. And if we can get those done, that's 80% of the attacks that we can care a little bit less about.
And so how does here's the thing is like you have, iPhones that have suggested passwords. You have, Google Chrome that has suggested passwords. And then you have business owners' lack of desire to think about how many passwords that were suggested to them that they should maintain. And where do I put that? Do I put it on a piece of paper? And then next thing you know, your cleaning lady has it and she's off in, the Maldives enjoying her life. It's like, how does a business owner, how are they supposed to understand passwords? Because there's so much conflicting information about how to formulate passwords. typically companies, of course, they give suggestions. They'll tell you what they believe is the best password combination for their particular system. But is there a general rule that small business owners should follow when it comes to this?
Let me give you some really kind of, let's do in 3 stages. So firstly, let's talk about those accounts we don't care that much about. So they've got no financial impact on your organization. Maybe you've just had to sign up to get a newsletter, or you had to get a template or whatever. It's not critical to your business, but you needed an account. So the easy path, if you can do it, use that single sign-on. So single sign-on, things like allowing you to log in with Facebook or Google or whatever it is. Use one of those, because every time you use that, yes, it is all linking it to your main account, but it means you don't have to remember a password. That's going to pass that through for you and handle it securely. If you can't do that, here's my trick. Don't try and remember the password. So when you sign up for it, I want you to mash that keyboard, just as many characters as you can be bothered doing, and then paste it into the second password box. And do not attempt to store it. Do not attempt to write it down. Next time you come to that site, just use a forgotten password mechanism. That way, that password is never stored anywhere other than the system that you're logging into. And you've got your trusted space. Your email account can be your central source. It's almost like doing the cheats version of SSO. So step 1, unimportant accounts, don't remember a password. The reason I say that is a lot of what we see in attacks is you'll choose a password that's common to you. You know, we've all done it. We've all got a password in our life that we know shouldn't really still be around, and that perhaps it's old enough to start school. But don't use them across multiple sites, because what will happen is one of these less important sites will be breached. That password becomes public, and there's about 1 billion passwords in the world right now that are public that you can just search for. And the attackers will take that list and they'll just try the same password over multiple sites. And so it might just be, you know, a newsletter site you signed up to, but suddenly something more important has been compromised as a result. So low-level sites, don't remember a password. Next tier up, now you've got 2 schools of thought on this. People will talk to you about password managers. Now, it's a piece of software you can store your passwords in. But if you're not especially technical and you are using Safari or you're using Google Chrome, they have a password manager built into them that is going to store those passwords for you. And I truly believe that unless you're in the deep tech space, those are actually pretty good. So get familiar with how to find that. So go to your little dotty menu in the corner, go and find the password section and go and find them, because you can A, create new passwords there and get suggestions, and B, you can then go and get them afterwards. And you can get them across multiple devices because that's going to sync for you. And the final thing is I want you to do some radical prioritization of your accounts. So I want you to look at your business and go, right, which systems do I use? What tools do I use that if this all went wrong, it's going to really hurt my business? Now, for me, that is my email. That is my social media to an extent, even though that's not an important tool for many, but because it's part of how my business markets, it's my voice of my company, and our finance systems, as well as our cloud infrastructure where we host the platform that we teach from. Now, for those 4, which is I have 480 passwords in my life because I have a password manager and count them because I'm that kind of nerd. For those 4, I'm going to spend a lot of time making sure those passwords are really high quality, that they're stored appropriately, that they've got unique passwords, that I've turned on 2-factor authentication. So do some prioritization and take care of those tools that are most important to you first.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I got hacked. I went overseas. And overseas for me is from the US to somewhere else, across the pond. And
at least you didn't say to Wisconsin or something, you know?
Yeah, right. I went overseas to Maine, and so I was in Thailand, and some jerk. I should never have. You know what happened? I have a VPN on my phone. I have a VPN on all my devices. And for a split second, when I connected to a Wi-Fi, I turned it off, and then I used it for maybe like an hour, couple hours, and I turned it back on. And within that like hour or hour and a half or 2 hours, I'm sure that was the gateway right there, because when I got back, someone had stole my Facebook and hacked my Facebook, and it has been months of me trying to get Facebook back. And once your Facebook is hacked, you can forget it. They have a hack system that does not work. Their recovery system is absolutely terrible, and they have no support to back up that hack. So that's a frustration.
But very true. And, you know, for some folks, just Facebook is just where you talk to your family or your friends, or, you know, you post your pictures to your elderly relatives or whatever. But for folks who are particularly in the business to consumer space, so if you're selling consumer products, that Facebook account may be really critical to you.
Yeah, it is. And so I did want to talk about the Google Password Manager, because like a lot of older individuals don't trust storing their password with those. How would you, as a cybersecurity expert, measure their their password management security versus, like a LastPassword or some other password software that's out there that helps you to remember your passwords?
So I think the things that I think about, so if I walk you through my process, that might be the way that you as an audience can try and do the same evaluation. So the first thing I kind of look at is the size of the organization. How many people are trusting this technology? Now, there are literally hundreds of millions of people who are storing their passwords in Google Password Manager, which means it's a huge target for an attacker. So like if you're an attacker, you're super efficiency driven. Like if I can hack one tool and get access to 100 million people, amazing. I'm going to totally do that. As a result, Google has to invest really heavily in the security controls in that browser and in that password manager. So to an extent, by virtue of Google being so ingrained and so widely used, the investment there is high. And so that gives me some comfort. I'm also a fan that one is already in my world. So I don't have to install a plugin or an extension. And extension marketplaces in browsers and in software in general are a bit of the wild, wild west. There can be all sorts of goings on there. And it's really hard to judge what's good and trustworthy and what's not. So for me, if I'm wanting to keep this very simple and not get more software, that's pretty good. Now, when you look at things like LastPass, 1Password, there's a whole bunch of them out there. They're really great tools, but like every other very high profile tool that's storing really sensitive information, they are under continual attack. And so they too are having to invest very heavily. The big difference between them, realistically, is the size of the organizations maintaining them, and also usability, which is not something security folk talk about a lot. But if you are non-technical, or if technology is just something you use to get the job done rather than you being like, yeah, I'm going to build systems for this, then sometimes the learning curve and the interfaces on using some of those external password managers can be a bit of a pain. And so if you're finding it really painful, it's full of friction, you're like, oh, I hate using this, please don't make me. Well, you won't use it because we're humans and we're very lazy at the end of it. And we hate pain, we hate friction. So choose the thing that is easiest for you to do. And there's nothing wrong with the Google one, but there's a caveat on this. You have to keep your browser up to date, which means if it's currently nagging you in the top right corner and saying, restart your browser, we need to update, please do it. Please let the browser sleep for a second. Let it do its update process, because that's how you get the latest version and that's how you stay safe.
Yeah, that makes sense. So in your cybersecurity education, what is it specifically? I mean, I think it's pretty obvious and pretty easy for a small business owner to understand why cybersecurity is important. But the real question is what specifically, like three simple things should small business owners know how to do on a regular basis, keeping cybersecurity education simple? What's like the low-hanging fruit that are the obvious things?
So we've talked about passwords. I won't go deep on that. So sort your passwords out. If the easiest way to do that is pick one password a week and just go, right, cool, I'm going to sort that one out. And either categorize it as one of the don't need to care too much about, do the forgotten password thing, or go sort it out properly. Just do one a week. Next up, keep your software up to date. So, like I said, attackers love to be really brutally efficient with what they're doing. And so they are looking for vulnerabilities all the time in the software we all use every day, whether it's the Microsoft Office suite, whether it's your browser, whether it's WordPress, whatever you're using to host your business website. Somebody's always looking for the secret backdoor, the place that they can get in and cause some harm. Now, every time this happens, every time it's found, a patch is released, an update, and it's our job to make sure those are applied as quickly as possible. Now, the reason we do it quickly is because once it's become public, once a bug has been found and someone goes, hey, I found a thing, 30 other people will go, oh, cool, that looks fun, I'll do that too. And so it goes from one bug to lots of people focusing on it. So the amount of danger increases. So easiest way to do this, turn on auto update for your devices, all of them. And then make sure you let them restart. That's the crucial part that nobody ever does, because you don't want to lose your tabs, or I'm in the middle of doing a thing, or it's going to be hard. Please do that, because without that update, the patches they can't update properly, and you can be vulnerable. The third thing is, and it sounds really depressing, but bear with me, I want you to assume breach. That means, in plain English, just assume a bad thing will happen. Like, we're not going to even bother arguing about it, because we're just wasting energy. Now, if you come in with the mindset of assumed breach, that something bad has already happened, well, that means you change your focus from how do I stop this to how do I respond? And that means having a very simple plan of, okay, team, if we get an email that looks a bit suspicious, here's what we're going to do. If we see a suspicious transaction on our account, here's our plan. And having little documented plans, and I'm a minimum viable documentation girl, so I'm talking a bullet list somewhere that you know where to find, that gives you this ability that when something bad happens, you can respond really quickly and confidently. And one thing you can add to your list is almost every country has a CERT, a Computer Emergency Response Team, that have free information on their websites about how to handle an incident and how to get help if you need it. So the US has a great CERT. New Zealand, where I am, we have NZ CERT. So wherever you are in the world, you can do that and find their resources online and use that to have your emergency plan so you know what to do if things go wrong.
Are most hacks that happen to small business owners or otherwise a result of, instead of there being like some kind of brute force attack that penetrates a security system, self-inflicted? Like, for instance, someone gets an email, from some prince of Saudi with a $40 million hostage negotiation, and I have your children, even though they're at school, and they click on it just because they're like, this is interesting. And are most of them like kind of self-invited, like Trojan horses from people's behavior? Or
I would say there's a lot of that. So human-centered attacks, things like phishing emails that you're describing there, are absolutely common and really effective. Now, I think the world has moved on, sadly, from the, I'm a prince and I need help to get hats for orphans, and you click on an absurd link somewhere. That was a beautiful time, because actually, if you engaged your brain a little bit, these were really obvious. But now I want you to think about,
I have so many relatives that are held hostage in the Middle East right now. And I had an aunt that died, apparently, that was like the queen of something. And she was worth $100 million. But I just find those funny. But anyways.
So all I'm learning about you, Micah, is you're really bad at keeping touch with your family.
That's true.
So, like the key lesson here might not be about security. It might be to talk to your loved ones so you know that they're not having problems and secretly royalty.
I'm also a terrible hostage negotiator. So
we all have our flaws. But I want you to think about ChatGPT for a second, right? There isn't a business out there that hasn't tried to use it for something.
Right.
Now, if you're an attacker, the nice thing about ChatGPT is you can give it a sample email and say, write me an email that sounds just like this one, but does this. So imagine taking a Netflix email, putting it into ChatGPT and saying, I would like you to write an email in this style that includes this link, and asks them to reset their password. So instead of us having these outlandish stories now in our phishing attacks, we can now automatically generate very convincing emails that look like they come from brands and companies that we know and already trust. And that's making it very, very difficult for us to spot these attacks. Now, for me, one of the most effective things I've ever done in this space, rather than just not trust anything, which is the traditional security approach, just, live in a cave, farm somewhere, don't embrace technology, take a breath. When you receive an email, the most important thing you can do is look at it and just think for a second, take a breath, go and have a cup of tea and go, cool, was I expecting that? One of the pressures on us in small businesses, particularly as entrepreneurs, is to respond quickly and to keep going and push and push and push. And that urge to push, that urgency, that causes us to click things and to make choices without as much analysis as we should. So if you get something unexpected, anything unexpected at all, I'm not saying wait a week, but just use it to go and, look out the window for 5 minutes, or just switch and do something else and come back to it, because that analysis process is what's going to save you most of the time.
Yeah, it's true. The what I've noticed is, so I'll tell you, I'll talk about this. How about we make it real? I'll tell you what my process is, and then you
Sure.
tell me if I am likely to be hacked by some.
Can I score you out of 10?
Yes.
Like the gymnastics.
Yes,
Cool.
please do. So I'll get a phishing email, or what I perceive as a phishing email, and I don't really know. And the first thing I do is I click on. I use a Mac just so that we know what OS I'm using. I'm using a Mac. I can click on the from address, and I look at the URL domain where the email is coming from. And so if it seems like it's off, or if it seems like, so I've known when I've had legitimate emails from a company that I do business with, I'll go back and I'll compare the domain names together. So like it may be, let's say Netflix.com here in the US, right? I'll go and I'll look at theirs, and it will be Netflix.something.com or .co. It would just, there'll just be like little, telltale signs. And then I'll also look, then I'll look at like the format of the email. There might be like a single space between the top line and the next paragraph. And then like I noticed that there's some kind of just grammatical things. There's an S where you're not supposed to put an S. They pluralize words or make them singular where they're supposed to be plural. Like, just like little grammatical mistakes. And then after I do that, yeah, that's those are kind of like my biggest tells. And then I think about the company themselves, right? So the IRS in the US moves like a turtle. Okay. They're fast at collecting money, but they're slow, even when it comes to trying to get money from people. Like for instance, who may owe a penalty or something, they send you a snail mail letter, and that's how they communicate. So like for them to send you an email about you owe some kind of back tax or something like that, that's probably incorrect because they're going to mail it to you. So I kind of think about the context of how the company historically operates. And then I make a determination. And then, of course, if it's something that's a threatening email, I just delete it, because I figure that the court system here, if you really want to bring me to court, then I'll have her knock on my door, and then I'll get served papers of some kind for whatever reason that a person's threatened me for. But like that's kind of like my process.
This is really interesting because and I don't know if you'll appreciate it because you're in the US, but there are elements of the US system that are very different to other places in the world. Like our tax office is fully online. It's all digital. So we don't do the snail mail anymore. So like for you, absolutely, that makes perfect sense. I know that they're going to send me actual physical paper in my mailbox. Great. Fantastic. I can ignore this. In this part of the world, everything from like toll booth notifications, the tax office, everything's coming digitally. Wow. And so we have, in a way, the US government might be making you more secure by being archaic. So there you go. Good work, government.
Yeah.
I'm probably going to get in trouble next time I travel. Oh, well. But your theories are good. Now, the ones I want you to look for very specifically, though, the ones that kind of get us on niggly edge cases, is companies like Samsung and Nikon and things, where they like buying up weird little subdomains like nikonoffers.com. And they genuinely do that as part of their marketing campaigns. They will have a million weird specific domains that are actually theirs. Now that makes it really hard. If they're not always consistently using the same domain, then there is nothing to stop me going in my browser right now and going to somewhere to buy a domain and going, I would like to buy, nikonsummeroffers.com. And if I can find it and it's available, I can go buy that.
Right.
So all of these, none of them are like true or false, pass, fail. It's all kind of you've got to take bits of them all together and kind of make a judgment call. And sadly, with time, this is going to get harder and harder. So keep doing it. It's a great process. Like kudos. I'll give you like a solid 8 out of 10.
Take it.
But only because you're relying on the tax system being slow. That's why you were downgraded. So if your government can help you get higher. But just be warned, as the systems become more digital, as they change, sometimes this is going to get harder and harder and harder for us.
Yeah, I can totally see that. And I think that, what I noticed is that there is, when a person is up in age, they become even more vulnerable, right? Because they, perhaps they may just say, hey, with this new internet thing, like it could be coming via email, right? And so like age, like targeting folks who are older, it seems like a tested way for these hackers to break through.
How old are you, Micah?
I'm 41.
We can't talk about the old people anymore. We are the old people now.
That's true.
Like,
I am middle-aged.
I turned 40 in February. So,
do you?
Yeah. So the interesting thing about this, right?
Oh, you're a baby. I'm half dead.
Oh, yeah. Well, true. Yeah, but you look great. So, let's roll with that. I mean, yes, it's true that older folks, particularly those who, don't spend as much time in technology, may be more vulnerable. But equally, those at the very beginning of their exciting careers, there is a difference in attitude to risk when you're younger. Because when you're younger, life feels very long. You've got so much time. It doesn't matter too much. And sometimes we're a little bit more kind of carefree in those early stages. It may be that we understand the tech, but we're like, yeah, but what's the worst that could happen?
Right.
So absolutely, like everyone at home, do a good citizen thing and go help your elders do technology, because seriously, they need everything they can get. But equally, watch out for the young ones who are still at that stage where they believe they know everything on the planet. And because they're going to fall foul just as well as we are, just to different types of attack.
Yeah, that's true. Somebody told me the other day, I was having a conversation with them, talk about age, and they said, oh, I thought I was middle-aged. I'm like, well, how old are you? And she said 60. I said, only if you live to 120.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to set the target, then yeah, sure.
Exactly. So, okay, so small business owners have. So you gave us some tips about what small business owners can do to kind of just grab that like low hanging fruit. When does it become, in your opinion, when does it become necessary for a small business company to hire an expert to come in? At what level? When should they consider it? What, in your opinion, is like a benchmark that they can think about to bring someone in and have them look at their systems?
So it really does depend on the type of business you're running and the industry you're in. So if you are, if you're running a chain of retail stores, your risk profile is very different to if you are doing financial services or, tax advisory, and there's so many different pathways we could all be on. Now, the first thing you want to check out is your industry regulated? So finance, health, there's all sorts of industries that have a standard that at a certain size of organization, you legally have to hit that standard. So that's a non-negotiable. If you're in a regulated industry like finance or health, you're just going to have to do it. And you have to do it at the point where you're big enough for that regulation to kick in. So each regulation scheme will have an idea of when it comes in. Sometimes it's instantly. Sometimes you have to be 25 people. So check with whatever industry you're in. And if there's an industry body or a union or something that can help you with that, go talk to them, because they will know this inside out. If you are not in a regulated industry, but you sell to large organizations, that's also a time to start thinking about it. So if you're just 5 people, but you're selling to Walmart or you're selling to, some huge organization, when they form that relationship with you, they're deciding, can we trust this small company? And does that small company pose a risk to us as a big company? Now, if you're selling soaps into supermarkets, cool, that's probably okay. They're going to be caring about, what's inside the soap, nothing else.
Yeah.
But if you are selling them an electronic system, a piece of software that's going to connect to their systems, they're going to care more. And at that point, they're going to express love in the way that only a big business can. They're going to give you a spreadsheet, and it's going to contain dozens of lines of security controls. And what they're looking to do is try and understand how you think about security and what you've done. Now, at that point, if you're selling to big organizations and you're going through this dance, then getting somebody to help you from time to time to understand and make a plan for that is really important. But hiring a full-time person is probably a way down the track. You need to be big enough that you're doing this a lot, and that you're trying to sell to these increasingly large, complex places. Now, if you're in the physical space, if you're selling widgets or clothes or whatever, actual physical goods, to be honest, the best investment you can make, especially if you're using a platform like Shopify or Big Cartel or any of those, online sales platforms, Squarespace, talk to the provider of your key system, your online marketplace. They will almost always have a guide to security for online stores. And they also have a really great security team. I know a lot of those people personally, and they can often offer you guidance because your biggest attack vector is going to be that store. That's where they're going to go first. So you don't need to hire someone specifically, but use what's built into your platform and ask the people who built it what you should do, because they'll be able to guide you.
Are you familiar with the liability? We're talking internationally now, but of course, the liability protocols around that kind of a hack. You have a store on a big platform, a Shopify, or you have an account with Alibaba Express, whatever the case is, and and there's a hack related to your store. Is there pass-through liability to these firms that small business owners shouldn't worry about? And then, of course, are you noticing any trends in insurance requirements for small business owners doing business with a larger firm?
Let's split that into two, because that's two really great questions.
Okay.
So let's talk about the pass-through liability. So in security, there isn't so much formalized yet, but it is coming. But what you will see is privacy law that is going to come into force for this. So if you're in California, the California Privacy Act is all about saying, hey, if there's been a breach and my customers were in California, I am liable for, if their personal information has been taken, I'm liable to provide protections for them in that event. In Europe, we have GDPR, which is their data protection law, and that says a similar thing. It says, hey, if your data is breached and it's out in the world, whether it's from your system you built or one you're using, then you can be liable to big fines. So privacy law is progressing a lot quicker than other types of law, and that's where you're going to see it first. If you're truly international with your audience, just be mindful that you have that responsibility to protect any information you store. So rule one of this is store as little as possible. If you don't need to do it, don't store it. That way you don't get covered by any law. And if you do store it, just be very, very mindful that in the event of something bad happening, you need to understand your responsibilities. Now, the insurance side is interesting. The cyber insurance industry has been booming for 10 years now. Mm-hmm. But increasingly in the last few years, it's getting harder and harder to get that insurance, because the insurers are saying you need to meet this threshold to get the insurance. And then from there, you need to, at the time of a breach, they need to know that you were still following all of those security things when the bad thing happened. Mm. Now, it's not to say you can't get it, but be prepared if you are trying to buy that insurance for them to give you a set of requirements that you need to be meeting, or for them to assess you based on your maturity and change your premiums based on that. If you're not doing anything, either they won't cover you or the premium is going to be very, very high. So it might be worth you getting a list, like in this part of the world, in Australia, New Zealand, we have the Essential 8 and the CERT's top 10 controls. These are the top 10 things you can do to protect your small organization. Right. The US has a similar list. If you can at least say, I'm doing these things, then your cyber insurers are going to feel more comfortable insuring your risk.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
And is part of that transaction amount too? Like, do these insurance companies want to make sure that you are meeting a threshold with amount of transactions, either not necessarily revenue numbers, or maybe revenue numbers, but number of transactions per fiscal year?
So, to be honest, the insurers that I've encountered will insure you no matter how many transactions you have. The amount of coverage you get and how much the premiums are changes based on your volume, but there doesn't seem to be a threshold on that. What they're looking for instead is that maturity of thought.
Mm-hmm.
Insurance is just a numbers game.
Right.
They're going to try and balance how much it's going to cost to pay out if this goes wrong versus how much money is in the organization versus the risk. So the actuaries and insurance folks, like, they are maths nerds to the extreme. They're going to have a figure for that. So you can get it, but what I would say is, before you go down that route, make sure you've got at least those low-hanging fruit in order, because somebody's going to ask you as part of that sales process.
Awesome. That's great. So before we look at the TikToks, the cybersecurity TikToks, because we're about to look at those, tell us about SafeStack, what it is, and what business owners who are watching this podcast or listening to the audio version will be able to find on SafeStack, and what they're going to be encountering when they get to your website.
Awesome. So we're an online education platform. Now, our primary focus is teams that build software. So we give everyone on the software team, so that's your developers, your testers, analysts, architects, all of those roles, all the skills they need to put security through all of the software they're building, from having an idea all the way through that system's life. And we do it through courses and qualifications and hands-on labs. Now, we also, as a side product, we have some awareness training. So all the types of things I'm talking about here, you can just add on. But the reason I'm mentioning this is I'm not going to try and sell you a wonderful audience. I'm not going to sell you a thing, because we have a free plan. Now, our free plan gets you essential security awareness training free of charge. Now, that's 10 modules, how to do your passwords, how to think about your devices, all those things that we've talked about today. And you can train up to 50 people free. So if you consider it my New Year's gift to the world, feel free to go to safestack.io, sign up for a free trial. It will drop off onto the free plan at the end. And you can then train your entire team to think about these things in just 10 modules, and each module is about 3 minutes long. So it's not a lot of your time. Now, for me, I succeed in the world if it becomes a little harder for attackers and if more smaller organizations embrace security early. So get stuck in there, and there's lots for you to then get on with and apply to your business.
Awesome. And I will be linking the platform, SafeStack URL, in the description of this podcast, both the YouTube and the audio version. So you all watching this will be able to see that. But now it's time to take a look at some of these Tic Tacs. I'm doing intermittent fasting, so my brain is defaulting to just food.
Yeah,
TikToks.
that's all good.
And we're going to get Laura's thought on them. And so let's start with The Office, because it's The Office. Let's see here. All right, here we go.
Oh, it's funny because it's true. Oh.
So this is obviously drawing that comparison between the different priorities of an organization. Your thought?
Yeah, absolutely. And it is a trade-off. It is, and it's so hard. Finance people, I love you. You're risk people, but your passwords are terrible. Like, do us all a favor, change your passwords. Developers, I love you too, but with great power comes great responsibility. Stop asking for so much, because it's much easier to protect what you don't have. And yes, the whole, we don't want to spend money. Nobody wants to spend money in 2024. It's painful. It was painful last year. It's going to be painful this year. Don't get carried away. Certainly don't spend a lot of money, but sometimes it's worth investing. So we are going to have to, unfortunately, get on with it a little bit this year.
Yep, you heard it here. All right. Up next, let's see what we got.
You can stop being a statistic. By 2024, 33% of small businesses will face security breaches every 3 months. Proactive security strategies lead to 53% fewer cyber attacks. Small businesses are prime targets, with 43% of cyber attacks aimed at them, and a shocking 83% are financially unprepared for the recovery. The consequences can be dire, with 60% going out of business within 6 months of a data breach. Offsite data backup is crucial for rapid recovery, and consistent IT support ensures smooth operations. Now, let's address identity-based attacks like phishing, where cyber criminals steal sensitive information. Protect your identity with multi-factor authentication, or MFA, your shield against evolving threats. In a security-focused world, managed security services are your trusted ally. Secure your future, protect your identity, and empower your business with us.
All right, no free advertising here on the Common Sense Show, unless the ones
not at all.
Other than the kind of upbeat football training sequence music. Do you find her statistics to be accurate?
So statistics are fun. There's one that you can make up for any occasion. They're not far off. Like the spirit is there. You know, I always love a statistic that comes with a source. So, you know, whatever. But look, the point is still the same. What I would say is I do love a good stock image, but don't make all of your, oh my God, we've been breached people women. And also, there were gems of useful information in that, but it was wrapped in a lot of advertorial. So, you know, just the key message there, turn on your two-factor. That was the most useful thing from that video.
Is there a difference between the two-factor authentication app and you getting texted that two-factor code?
So they both do the same job. Technically, if you were going to really nerd out about it, the SMS version where you're getting sent it to your phone is less secure. There's a few attacks there, such as SIM cloning and SIM swapping, where people can get access to that number. So technically, if we were going to be real nerds, we'd say we'd prefer you to do the app thing. However, the two-factor you use is better than not doing anything at all. So if actually for your world, SMS is where you need to be, then roll with that for now until you're ready to do the app.
Yeah, that's good advice. I used the after that hack, when I came back from Thailand, I switched to the Microsoft authentication app, and it's mildly inconvenient, but I feel way more secure with it.
So I'll tell you a fun little story. My daughter is now 5, or my youngest is, and when she was little, she used to play a game called Does It Float? And she would just find items from around the house and throw them into bodies of water. And it turns out she liked trying to do that with phones. That's not a great plan. I now use an app called Authy. One of the big challenges with two-factor authentication apps is if you lose the phone or destroy the phone, it's really painful. So I use an app called Authy. I think it's built by Twilio. It's free, but it allows you to move the app between phones.
Oh, smart.
So when my daughter decided to drown my phone on more than one occasion, I was able to get it set up again without much hassle. So if you are like me and your risk profile includes an unpredictable small child, Authy might help you out.
Yes, excellent. Or just jumping into bodies of water for whatever reason.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't judge.
Thank you.
Not this time of year. It's cold where you are.
I judge that behavior. All right, let's go.
And this is why this and this and this password is rubbish. 8-character password, or even now 13 characters, and it should have uppercase P and A and SS or $, W0RD, exclamation mark. Those passwords, you won't believe how easy they are to hack nowadays. And we're also told to change our passwords every 3 to 6 months. The problem with that is, I don't know about you, but unless you're using a password manager, you just forget. So if these passwords are not good enough anymore, what is the solution? Well, we just recently completed our Cyber Essentials accreditation, and the stuff we learned was phenomenal and so simple. So what the government and a lot of security agencies around the world are recommending is that you use 3 words. So look around you in the room. At the moment, I'm seeing a camera, I'm seeing a light, and I may be seeing a chair. So what should your password be? Camera, light, chair, all one word. Use 3 words that you're going to remember, but they must not be associated in any way. And these are the simplest ones to keep.
This guy's about to get torched by you, and I'm here for the whole thing.
No. Bad video. No biscuits. Okay, let's talk about this. Firstly, passwords don't get hacked. Passwords get guessed. Let's take the mysterious language away. This is not wizardry. Somebody is basically saying, I have 8 characters. Cool. Do you remember when you have you find a rotation padlock with like the little barrels? And you're like, I can't remember the code to it. And so you go, all right, 0000001. And you sit there watching TV, trying to figure out, or maybe it's only me, everyone else just throws them away. What they're doing when they guess passwords is they're just trying every permutation, every combination of letters and numbers. Now, they don't do that manually. They write a piece of computer code to do it. It's about 6 lines of code. It's tiny. And the little computer will just try every single combination. The other thing that we do is, as I mentioned earlier, there's about 1 billion passwords in the world that have already been breached from things. So we just try those one after another. So the reason 8 characters is really, really bad is because computers can do that guessing really, 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 really quick. And it doesn't take us very long. Now, that 3 words thing is junk because computers are really good at systems. Like if I say, okay, the password is going to be 3 English language words with no space between them, here's a dictionary, the little computer is going to generate all those permutations really quick because it's a very small search space. If you're looking for a silly idea of how to set a password and you're not just doing the forgotten password thing, let me give you an alternative hack for this one. Hack.
She said
hack. Right. You know when you're singing along in the car, Micah, and you're convinced you know the lyrics to the song and you're just like belting it out, power ballads. I know that's going to be your thing.
Yeah. Totally.
I want you to use that line from a song. Use a quote from a movie. You don't even have to get it right. But if you've got a sentence that has got uppercase, lowercase, and punctuation in it, that's huge. And a line from a song is likely to be 30, 40 characters long. So if you're really, really into Celine Dion, then choose a Celine Dion lyric with the spaces in it and have that as your password. Because there is no computer system on the planet that is going to go through every song lyric of everything that you've misremembered in your car while you're singing along. And also try all of the permutations of your bad spelling, your bad punctuation. There's so much variety in your memory, in your interpretation of a song lyric or a movie quote, that would be much better and you might find it more memorable.
That's awesome. You could also use the first sentence and the bad grammatical spelling of a phishing email attempt to steal your money.
Anything that stays in your brain, my darling. If you remember it and it's special to you, you go for it. But we're aiming for long. Long is the best thing you can do. So if it's 30, 40 characters long, don't be put off by that. Just embrace something that is naturally long and use that instead.
All right. I like that. Let me think of a song. That's going to be my next password, my song.
Yeah, but you can't say it on your podcast. Otherwise that doesn't work, mate.
I can't. It's true. Yeah. I'll just start singing songs and then I'll have no money left. So there'll be that. All right. Last one. Here we go.
Here are 5 things I would never do as someone who works in cybersecurity. 1-word passwords. What are you doing? Do you just want people to break into your stuff? Do you know how many people have passwords that are just password? Or 1, 2, 3. I have full sentences. Like the login for my gym, make it something like ass fat 3, 4, 5. 2. I don't click on links in my emails at all. If you get an email from your bank, just go and log in to your bank. Do you know how many people get in trouble because they click on links and then all of a sudden you're typing in your account number for some dude who's hanging out somewhere else? Come on, son. 3, linking your Google account to everything feels helpful in the moment because you're lazy, but being lazy never did anything for your internet security. I'm just saying, their password keeper, you could write it down. Just like old people will come into the Apple store with little notebooks where they'd be like, my password is 735, I love cats. Something like that. But don't link everything to Google because then if I hack into your Google account, I have all of your information. All of it. It's a one-stop shop. I could just rob you in one fell swoop. Make it easy for a criminal. 4, I feel like we all know this. Don't use public Wi-Fi because who else is using the public Wi-Fi? Criminals. If I was a criminal, I would hang out on public Wi-Fi and wait for you to log into your banking app so that I could get your money. I have nothing else to do. I'm a criminal. 5, always have two-factor authentication turned on. Yes, it's annoying. It's annoying to sign into something and then have to type in a number that you get from your text. But that might stop a criminal from actually using your data. How many times have you signed into something and had it pop up when you didn't think it would pop up? The same thing happens when someone else is trying to sign in using your basic password 123, and then it pops up on your end and you say, no, that's not me in Nigeria. I'm here in New York. If you follow these steps, you will be miles ahead of other people. Here.
I don't know if she's ready for bed or to get her day started, but does she have a point here?
Yeah, I was confused by that too, but also, like, you know, she's a smart woman. I love her for her style. So, like, let's kudos for the not terribly boring video. So I'd say 3 of her 5 points, super solid. You know, turning on your two-factor, having good quality passwords. The ones that I would disagree a little bit with are the Google thing. Now, as an attacker, I'm not going to go after each of your individual accounts. I'm just going to go after your Google to start with. And I'm going to be able to get into any one of your accounts, regardless of whether they use Google for authentication or their own password, because I'll just use a forgotten password mechanism. If I'm into your Google account and you've used that email address as your sign up, I'm not going to try and guess the password. I'm just going to go forgotten password. I'm going to get the new password reset link sent to the email, and I'm going to log in there. So I understand the thinking. The bigger risk with using Google to sign into everything, or Facebook or TikTok or whatever you're using as your authentication, is that if you get rid of that account, you lose access to all of your other accounts. So if somebody was to take control of your email and destroy it, like, you know, delete, cancel, gone, then you're going to have a real bad time, because you've got that central point. But you're going to have a bad time anyway, because somebody's in your email and just destroyed it all. You're probably just actually having a really bad year. The other one that I would kind of just look at slightly differently, public Wi-Fi. Yes, public Wi-Fi is a bit feral. But the other thing that there's a misconception that all of the things, you know, if you're sat on a public Wi-Fi network, you can see everything that's being sent around. Well, when we're online, 99% of the traffic now that's going around on the internet is encrypted. So from the moment my computer says to your computer, hi, I would like to do a transaction with you, I'd like to share some information, that entire tunnel between us is encrypted using HTTPS. So it's an encryption protocol over HTTP. That means that as an attacker, I can't just see your password on the wire unless I am particularly sophisticated. So if I am sat somewhere on the infrastructure itself. So that's not just a, hey, some punk kid is sat in a cafe next to me and they can see my password. Actually, it's a relatively different level of sophistication. There is one exception to this, and that's things like hotel Wi-Fi, because hotel Wi-Fi will often have things inside them that break down encryption just so that they can enforce rules. So like you're doing, Micah, having a VPN on your phone makes it much safer. So rather than avoid public Wi-Fi, which if you're traveling in particular might be really hard to do, right, instead have a VPN on your phone. And things like Apple will help you do that really easily now.
Yeah. Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. And of course, like with my story, like I was connected to the hotel Wi-Fi where I was, but I hadn't turned on my VPN prior to logging on, and the stuff moves really fast, especially if a person's already kind of connected and doing their, you know, malevolent behavior, engaging in malevolent behavior that causes destruction to people who are just trying to buy fried rice on vacation. So that's kind of what I get from that. Laura, how can people contact you if they want to learn more about the education tools that SafeStack provides, or maybe they want to bring you in to consult with them because they need your expertise?
Sure. The best place, I think I'm getting older because now I get to say this one, but LinkedIn, to be honest. So just find me on LinkedIn, send a connection request. I love meeting people. I love listening to what you're up to. I collect stories, if you will, of people doing cool stuff in business, particularly young companies, and where security fits. So come and have a chat. You'll also find me on most social media platforms, but I make no apologies for the fact that I am a full-fledged human. So it's not all security all the time, just an average human most of the time. So LinkedIn is your first point of call.
Awesome. So hopefully you all got a bunch of points today about how you can protect your small business from security cyber threats, and how you can take care of some low-hanging fruit, and how you can actually effectively put in place some protocols to prevent you from going down the bad road, the bad, dark, dangerous, bumpy,
Dark wood.
pothole-filled road of being unsecure. And after this podcast, no one should be unsecure again. Well, Laura, thank you so much for coming today and speaking to all the folks who are tuning in from around the world and around the U.S. And we're looking forward to implementing the suggestions that we learned from you today.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Awesome. So remember, that's it for us today. But remember, if you don't go about doing your business, then you're going to be going about doing the business of someone else. I'm Micah. She's Laura. We're out of here. Bye. Wrong button. I'm still trying to figure out how to do this. This is really the end right here.